Hi everyone, it's day 4 of Miss Bradshaw's American History class. Today we are going to be talking about colonization. So this is technically before our curriculum begins. So that's why this is still considered part of the Unit 0 or like background knowledge content. So hopefully these are things that you have learned in civics or in middle school, but we are going to do a little jump in here of some review of this, or perhaps introducing it for the first time. That's totally fine as well. That's why we have this day. So today I'm going to skip doing the warm-up for this video and jump right into these slides and notes on colonization. The question I'd like you to be thinking about is, how does the environment and geography impact how different colonial regions develop? We're going to jump right into the content here with the Columbian Exchange. So in my last lesson, we began looking at the Columbian Exchange. I asked you to draw it from memory, see if we have any pre-knowledge of what this entails. And then we reviewed that this is the movement of plants, animals, and disease between Eastern and Western hemispheres. So the Eastern hemisphere being the Americas and the Western hemisphere being Europe and Africa. One of the biggest impacts of the Columbian Exchange is that Native American people did not have immunity to the European diseases, so many people died. About 20 million Native American people likely died from the Columbian Exchange. So I'll have you do a practice multiple choice question. Go ahead and pause and practice this at home if you are interested. Which of the following best describes the Columbian Exchange? You should have the exchange of goods, ideas, plants, animals, and diseases from the Old World, so that would be like Europe and Africa, to the New World, which is the Americas. Now, the countries of Europe are fighting for who is going to have control over this New World. So they're going to try to divide, draw a little line to divide where different countries will have influence. Particularly, Spain and Portugal are going to try to use this solution. So they'll draw this line where Spain gets everything to the left, Portugal gets everything to the right. So you'll notice that Portugal is not getting very much land here. Now, they did not know yet at the time of drawing this line how much land actually existed. So they did not know that this was a smaller portion. They also figured this would give Portugal more influence over Africa, trade routes there, and influence over existing countries in Africa. This country here is Brazil, and in Brazil, many people still speak Portuguese. So this is one example of a modern day connection to something that happened within this era. So because this line was drawn, this is the only country in South America that Portugal has control over. Many people still speak Portuguese, whereas most of South America speaks Spanish. One of the reasons for Spanish conquistadors coming to South America was to spread Catholicism. So Catholicism is a sect of Christianity. It was the original sect of Christianity, where one of their goals here is going to be to spread their religion to the native people of the Americas. They're going to send out these missions full of priests and other religious leaders to build churches, forts, homes, and try to help the native people to learn about this religion and convert them ultimately. So this was one of the goals of colonization. Another goal is mercantilism. So this is kind of a complicated economic process. We'll have several slides on this because it's a big concept for you to understand the relationships between Europe and the Americas. So England governed the economies of 13 colonies according to the system of mercantilism. I have a definition here of it. It's an economic system developed to increase a nation's power by imposing government regulations and trade policies. Here, you'll see this little graphic. So the mother country in this case is England. It is giving manufactured goods to the colony, while the colony is giving the mother country the raw materials. Colony produces raw materials, sends it to the mother country develops and manufactures those raw materials into finished products and then sells them back to the colony. It may be doing the same thing with other raw materials from other colonies. These colonies are not permitted to trade with one another. The mother country has the power here. They want to be the one that is having the profit. Therefore, they have this concept of the colony should only interact with the mother country. And that's where these navigation acts of the 1660s comes in. This is a series of laws that restrict the colonies from using foreign shipping with any other country or colony in many cases other than England. So they only want England to benefit from the colonies. The colonies should not be trading with other European nations. This will give England a heads up, and this will give them a jump in this game of competition amongst the other European countries. So here we have another little graphic. The colony is the source of raw materials. The home country is going to pay them a small payment for that raw material, and then they're going to manufacture and export it into something more profitable. They'll sell it back to the colony and to other countries and to other colonies to make more profits. This also contributes to triangular trade. It's important not to mix up the Columbian Exchange with triangular trade. So remember, the Columbian Exchange is this exchange of ideas, materials, diseases from the old world to the new world. So it's not necessarily trade, but rather these cultures intertwining and contributing to globalization. Triangular trade is more related to mercantilism. The raw materials are coming out of the colonies. The manufactured goods are being distributed throughout whoever would like to buy them. And this is where the triangle comes in, something we haven't talked about yet. Enslaved African people are coming from Africa to the colonies. So the colonies are beginning to rely on slavery in order to produce all of these raw materials effectively that England and other European countries are demanding from their colonies. Triangular trade is very much going to impact the economy, society, and culture of the American colonies. So let's go through just a few examples here. The economy. The colonies of what becomes the United States are going to begin by being primarily focusing on raw materials. So they are not focusing at this time on manufacturing at all. They're trying to export raw materials as their main source of income. Let's then skip to culture. So slavery becomes very much ingrained in the culture of the Americas. So things that will continue to contribute to the culture from this time period onwards, such as race relations and class relations throughout long time in American history, will come back to this triangular trade when slavery began having a large impact in the Americas. And society. So I think with society, we can connect that most to government relations. Once the colonies have been living in this system of triangular trade for quite a while, they might get a little bit frustrated with these navigation acts. They see other examples of ways to make good profit and might want to take advantage of those, but England has made it illegal for them because England is trying to make the most amount of money possible. They see these colonies as an economic investment, not the colonies to make as much money as they want, but for England to make as much money as England wants from their economic investment of the colonies. So that's going to impact leading to the American Revolution. Like us colonial people, we want to be able to decide how to trade and make as much money as we want. We don't think that we should exist just to benefit England. And we'll go into that a little bit more in the next lesson. So let's talk a little bit more about the slave trade. So many enslaved African people are being exported forcefully through to the colonies, not only to the North American colonies in what will become the United States, but also to the Portuguese colonies, to the Spanish colonies throughout South America, throughout the Caribbean, and throughout what will become the United States. This is part of the trade system. So it happens sometimes that in exchange, for example, for manufactured goods, sometimes African chiefs are participating in this system of exporting enslaved African people to the colonies as part of this trade system. So it's not always Europeans coming to like capture enslaved African people, but tribes being pitted against one another, trying to fight for economic empowerment among their own tribe as well, and trying to take advantage of other tribes when possible. So let's do this little practice of what is triangular trade. Ooh, gave away the first one. What is depicted by this map? Triangular trade. For the others, give a little pause before I talk about these. Number 2, what shipped from the colonies to England? That's going to be raw materials. From England to the colonies, manufactured goods. What's the significance of the bottom row of the triangle, Africa to the Caribbean? This is the slave trade, or the Middle Passage is the title of the journey that enslaved African people are taking from Africa to the colonies. It's called the Middle Passage, referred to the terrible tragedies that the people are facing on this ship. Many people are dying from disease, maltreatment, poor living conditions for the months that they are sailing, or the weeks that they are sailing on these ships. And then what is the purpose of the Navigation Acts of the 1660s? That is to prevent the English colonies from trading with other colonies from other countries, or other countries themselves besides England, in an attempt for England to have the economic power here. They don't want the colonies to be making the calls on who has the economic power. So let's take a step back and say, what is a colony? When we're talking about this concept of colonies, we're moving towards colonization. What is that? Spain is the first to be establishing colonies in the Americas. And a colony is a nation or a territory that's ruled by another country. So New Spain is the set of colonies that Spain creates. This is mostly in Middle America and the Western South American Southwest of the United States, Florida. Spain really inspires England and other countries like Portugal and France and the Netherlands to try to race to establish as many colonies as possible in this, quote, New World, which is, of course, the Americas. So here we see some color-coded examples of where different countries colonized. You'll see all this green area is Spain, followed by Portugal, France, some Russian colonization, just a few Dutch colonization, and the British colonization, or the English colonization. So many people might be surprised, since we focus so much on the English colonies, that many other countries had such significant influence throughout the Americas as well. We'll talk about their interaction as that time comes, as America expands. So let's talk about a few of the specific colonies that the English create in what becomes the United States. England is trying to assert their influence in North America. They've chosen to focus on North America. Spain has reigning influence in South America, as well as Portugal. So the English see colonization as a way to expand their economy, increase political influence, and alleviate social problems like overcrowding, crime, poverty. Some other reasons that people may be interested in moving to the British colonies might come to mind, such as religious freedom as a motive for people moving away from England to the colonies, or to become rich, to find gold. So one of the first English colonies is Roanoke, which actually is in North Carolina. So this is a failed first attempt for the English to establish colonies. It was led by Sir Walter Raleigh, which is how we get the name of the capital of North Carolina. And John White led many colonists to Roanoke to establish a colony there. But they are running very low on supplies, and some of the leaders have to sail back to England to try to pick up some more supplies. When those leaders return, they find no trace of the colony. They find one word written on a tree, Croatoan, and this creates a mystery as to what happened to the people who were living in this colony. So there are a few main theories. One theory is that these settlers migrated and integrated with Native American people who accepted them, and these settlers may have intermarried with Native American people over time. There's evidence towards this with genetic testing that some of the Native American people who can be traced back to this area also have signs that they could be descendants of the last people of Roanoke. It also could be possible that these colonists died from disease or environmental factors, and perhaps the Native American people buried them or moved their bodies so that there was not evidence there of those deaths. Or perhaps the colonists died from attacks from the Native American people and their bodies faced a similar fate to be disposed of by the Native American people who did the attacks or a different tribe. So it's up to you to decide what you might think of that. Jamestown is going to be an example of a successful colony. So this is the first permanent British settlement in North America, chartered by King James I. That's why it's called Jamestown, and funded by the Virginia Company or the Joint Stock Company. Now, this name might come up again later. The purpose of this colony is to make profits. They think these colonists are going to find silver, gold, precious resources. That's what these colonists have come to do, to mine for gold, to search for gold. Do you think they're actually going to find gold based on your knowledge of Virginia? Not much, probably not. There's not a lot of gold there. So most of the people who go to Jamestown are men, soldiers, or upper class people who are primarily there for what they think will be a pretty easy mission to find some gold. Now, this is in Virginia on the James River. There's deep water, there's a good defensive position, but they're going to face a lot of challenges. We're going to go through a lot of them here. So one of the challenges is that they decided to locate their colony in the midst of the powerful Powhatan Confederacy, which is a Native American nation led by the chief Powhatan. And Pocahontas is Powhatan's daughter. So you probably have heard of this legend of Pocahontas. If you've seen the Disney film, one of the iconic scenes is when Pocahontas jumps in front of her father, who is about to slay John, and says, "Please do not kill him." Now, it is more likely, now that we have more evidence and have learned more about Native American customs, that Pocahontas was part of a ritualistic ceremony with her father Powhatan. So this could be a like a performance or ritual ceremony where they're like doing like a play or a show of a demonstration of their unity with the new settlers. So Pocahontas, in that case, would have had a part to play in that ceremony where they were just acting out this idea of slaying John, and then Pocahontas stepping in is the symbol of unity. So that could be an alternate example of what actually happened at Jamestown, rather than this idea that the chief was actually going to slay John and Pocahontas stepped in to save him due to her love. Another factor that made Jamestown really challenging was the unfamiliar climate and environment. It's a lot hotter in Virginia than it is in England. There's high humidity, there's disease such as malaria, and also there are not very many skilled laborers. These people did not come to farm, they came to find gold. They did not think it was going to take this long. They were not prepared to support themselves in building a new land. So recently there have been artifacts of bones found at the remains of Jamestown. And these people show how people may have died during this time period, which includes from disease and from accident, as well as many other causes. So things keep getting worse in Jamestown with this period called starving time. This is a period of extreme famine, death, and disease where 90% of the colony's population died. There were only 60 survivors out of 600 original residents. Now, John Smith wrote many letters and reports about what happened during this starving time, and he even speaks of murder and cannibalism because the people were so desperate. And of course, it's taking a lot of effort to receive any support from England because of the time it takes to communicate and the time it takes to sail from the colonies to England. Now, one of our previous lessons, day 1 or day 2, was on enduring issues. So enduring issues, again, are the 9 categories that we look for throughout history to explain some thematic connections throughout multiple lessons. So some of the ones, pause and think to yourself, what are some that you see as connections here? You can connect a lot of them. Some of them that come to mind are scarcity. The resources are so scarce and people are fighting over those resources. We've also got conflict between the Native American people and the settlers. We've got desire for power. The people here have come to try to exert power over this land, to exert power over their peers back in England. They want to bring home riches and have power in the form of monetary wealth. So those are some that come to mind here. You can make an argument for some others as well. So King James issued a second charter to send more colonists to arrive at the colony. And these more colonists do go to the colony, but they're continuing to fail to make a profit for the Virginia Company until 3 years later when tobacco is introduced into the economy. And this completely changes Virginia. Tobacco becomes an incredibly profitable crop. Labor demands increase, and this creates a need for indentured servitude. So this might be a concept that you're familiar with. Indentured servitude is the idea that people who are currently living in that colony might sponsor a trip for a servant to come from England and assist them. And they will be an unpaid laborer for example, 7 years to pay off their voyage, and then they are free to do work for pay for the same person or do a different job as they please. Jamestown also became the first representative government in the European colonies. So these early forms of government are going to play into when we talk about the Articles of Confederation and the Constitution as the United States begins to form its first government. Another colony that forms in North America by the English settlers is Plymouth. Plymouth is founded in 1621 by the Puritans. This is a group of religious people who were granted a charter to begin a colony, and they also faced hardships. In the first winter, half of the people died from disease or starvation, but still more settlers were happy to be there because of the religious freedom that came from this new place. They were looking to permanently relocate with their families so that they could practice their religion freely without discrimination. So this is different from Jamestown, where just men were coming to, mostly just men, were coming to look for gold. These are people who are willing to build a family life here in this new place. They have come with their husbands, wives, and children. Plymouth faces less struggles than Jamestown because the climate is more similar to England's. There's less disease, cooler climates. There's not a large native population here because the people who were living here had already died from disease prior to the Puritan arrival. There is less fertile soil here than in the South, so most people are just farming to sustain their own families, not to make a profit through farming. At this colony, the Mayflower Compact is signed. So this is a foundation of the law of Plymouth Colony in Massachusetts and established this idea of self-government. So that is the idea that they're not only governed by the laws of England, but they're going to establish a local government where the people have a lot of say about the happenings in their local community. So these local governments that are created in Jamestown and Plymouth are inspired by some existing English documents that have occurred over time. So for example, the Magna Carta is one of these documents. This was signed in 1215, so quite a while ago. It limited the king's powers, guaranteed jury trials, and limited the king's right to tax and raise an army. So this is the foundation for limited government, that government has some sort of form of checks and balances, which will come up again when we discuss the Constitution. And we've got the English Bill of Rights. So you know that also when we discuss the Constitution, we'll also see the Bill of Rights. So this English Bill of Rights required free elections, freedom of speech in Parliament, limited taxes without authority of Parliament, and this is going to have a massive influence on the colonies and, again, on the Constitution. I think this is something you've probably discussed in civics before, since it has such a great influence on the U.S. government as it comes to be. So here's a practice multiple choice. Take a little pause if you'd like to try it yourself. Which early American colony is known for establishing the first example of self-government through the adoption of the Mayflower Compact in 1620? That's going to be Plymouth. So we've talked about the first three here. Plymouth is the one that uses this Mayflower Compact. Now, this colony is also inspired by some Enlightenment ideas. We're going to touch on Enlightenment ideas again next time. So some of the important ones that touches on are social contract theory, that government comes from the consent of the governed. So in both of these examples of government from Jamestown and from Plymouth, the people agree to have a government as long as that it does not violate their rights and freedoms. And we also come from John Locke's idea of natural rights, rights that are so basic they cannot be taken away, such as life, liberty, and property. In the Declaration, this is life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So the Declaration is also going to draw on this idea of natural rights from John Locke. We're going to talk about some more conflicts next time when we talk about the title of next lesson is going to be taxes and conflict. So we'll see a lot of conflict emerge. I want you to begin to brainstorm what some of those conflicts might be. So we're going to have three main categories: European/colonists versus Native American people. We already hinted at that today. European countries battling European countries. I talked about that a little bit today too. And established settlements versus frontier areas. You can make some assumptions on that one from today. We'll get into that a little bit more next time. So for your exit ticket, I want you to think about one of these three categories. If you're in person with me, talk to the people around you about it and come up with a little description about what this conflict might include. You write out some, like one sentence or some phrases that come to mind, things from today or things that you predict happening in next lesson and in the upcoming lessons. Thank you guys so much for watching today and making a great effort to study American history. Thank you.